Welcome to the Sovereign System, the only place where we don't just analyze the system, we architect a way out. Are you tired of being told you're a component, a mere cog in a machine you don't understand? We reject the idea that your only goal is to survive the chaos. Our purpose is to become sovereign, that is, fully decoupled, resilient, and in command of your own life. Each week, we use a powerful 360-degree framework combining Terence McKenna's novelty theory, occult history, material sciences, and the intentional change model to cut through the noise and reveal the forces shaping your reality. I'm Dave, one of your hosts. While I often dive deep into galaxy brain complex systems, my co-host John ensures I stay grounded and focused on practical, real-world steps.
That's right, Dave. My job is to be the street level translator. I make sure that everything we discuss, from the massive novelty spikes to the four quadrants of reality, is immediately actionable in your day to day life. We're here to build the bridge between the grand geopolitical chess game and the health of your mind, body, and bank account.
Not only bank account, but also your soul. But let's dive in. This is the sovereign system.
Dave, I got to tell you, from last week's episode, the amount of time I've gotten myself away from my phone, I'll go into work and I'll just shove my phone somewhere where I have to actually actively work on finding it. And I'm telling you right now, my phone time is down. Actually, I turned on the little screen time monitor
Hmm.
on the Apple iPhone, like it's a setting in there, and it
Yeah,
actually told me my screen time was down from last week. So
nice.
I'm succeeding in our sovereign win. I feel great. The phone is over there in a ditch, but
Yeah,
I'll go digging for it if I hear it vibrating, like emergency call. But
yeah.
we have not entirely gotten out of the system, but we are working on it,
Baby
Dave.
steps. Yeah, baby steps. No, that's great. You've added a layer of friction, right? That's kind of like what we discussed in last week's episode. And it's interesting because we were talking before the episode started here. I can't believe it's episode 4, by the way. It's kind of crazy. Getting a lot of
Flying by.
good, I know, getting a lot of good reception from the audience, and I think that's great. The architects out there are listening and they're building, and that's fantastic. Um, you know, I kind of also have been adding friction in my life. I realized that I was scrolling a whole lot, and I decided to put my phone down and like take not even like naps, but like go lay in bed and cover my eyes up and just kind of shut down for like 10, 15 minutes to help the, prefrontal cortex strengthen, like we discussed.
Yep.
And I've noticed that it's actually really increased my focus. So it's just like those interesting things where, as we kind of navigate this podcast or show or whatever we're calling it now, and we kind of research these things. We're learning, right? I
Mm-hmm.
kind of knew these concepts, I've studied these concepts, but now actually kind of going through it with the intentional change model and like working with people on this, it's actually and implementing it ourselves, we're seeing it work. At
It's
least I am.
refreshing. It's refreshing. I love seeing the people around me change as well, Dave. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's great. Now I'm here. I'm glad you added that layer of friction, kind of like I did, and we're escaping at baby steps, right? We're building those planks. We're not trying to jump the canyon all in one go. We're just building small stuff. So we're gonna do a quick recap of episode 3. We've dove into the concept of ghost in the machine in the high-level framework of the learning agenda of the intentional change model, or ICM.
That's right, Dave. For those who missed it, the ghost in the machine essentially describes that underlining, often unconscious programming that drives our default behaviors. The ICM framework is our roadmap for making lasting change. Imagine your mind as a beautiful walled garden.
Absolutely, John. It's not a spooky spirit. It's a restless gardener trying to replace your valuable crops with weeds. These weeds are psycho-technological systems, our phones, social feeds, and endless notifications. They don't want your soul, they want your attention, like we discussed in last week's episode. Your attention is the sunlight that lets your garden grow. How the whole thing works, the attack. The ghosts use tricks like the unpredictable ding that hooks your brain with dopamine. It uses collective thought forms, egregores like viral outrage to fragment your focus. It's a neurological battle for control of your own focus.
So, Dave, after laying out the problem with the attention economy, we have to talk about the fix. What's the counter spell you mentioned for reclaiming our focus?
The solution is all about intentionality and focus, John. Think of it like this. We're putting up better walls and tending our internal garden with discipline.
I like that. Tending our garden. So, practically speaking, what are the first steps to putting up those walls and getting disciplined? Most people feel utterly powerless against their phone.
Well, the first step is simple, but hard. Regulate device use. You decide when the garden gate is open. You have to set non-negotiable times to disarm the addiction loop. You're the master, not the servant, of your schedule.
That makes sense. Got it. We're setting the schedule, not letting the notifications set it for us. But what about when we are trying to work? Our minds are trained for those tiny dopamine hits every few minutes. How do we rebuild that muscle for deep work?
That's where practice single tasking comes in. I call it deep weeding. You have to consciously rebuild your mind's muscle for deep, sustained thought. Focus on one task at a time. No jumping between email, a document, and a Slack thread. Give your full, undivided attention.
Dave, and the third point, withdrawing psychic energy. That sounds a bit esoteric. What does that mean in the context of, say, scrolling past a crazy emotional headline?
It's about recognizing the pattern and starving the beast. When you see a viral outrage or tempting drama, recognize it for what it is, an egregore, energy feeding on your attention. That psychic energy is a weed in your garden. Starve the weeds by simply looking away. Don't engage. Don't give it your attention.
That connects perfectly to the conclusion. We've been talking about all these steps, and you deliberately chose the word architect. Why that term?
Well, we chose architects because by doing this, by setting these boundaries and withdrawing their attention, they are taking an active participation in the deconstruction of their old reality, the one built by distraction, in order to build a new, better, brighter one, and not just for themselves, but for everyone.
So it's not just self help, it's a commitment to a better collective future. It's about taking your agency back.
Exactly. We are here to help you learn what the truth is and how to make that determination for yourself. We give you the tools to take your agency and free will back. Be the architect. To defeat the ghost, you must stop being a passive spectator and become an architect of your own mind. When you own your own attention, you own your own reality. You control the light and you decide what grows in your garden. And a key point we stressed is the learning agenda. It's crucial. It's how we identify what new behaviors we need to adopt to create the change we want.
But it's not just about learning in a theoretical sense. We emphasize that the learning agenda and the act of experimenting with these new behaviors must be a parallel efforts. You have to try them out in the real world to see what truly works for you.
Exactly. It's the constant feedback loop. And that brings us to the final, perhaps most critical discovery of intentional change model frameworks, the need to build a community of like valued individuals.
This community acts as an anchor. When you experiment with new behaviors, you need a support system to help you solidify them and make them permanent. The goal is to make the new behavior a self sustaining system.
And that, John, is the very foundation of what we were trying to create with Sovereign System Community. It's the environment where that lasting intentional change can truly flourish.
Well said, Dave. A vital recap to set the stage for where we're headed next.
All right, let's take a look at this week's episode. Yeah, well, this week's episode, episode four, actually. Let's kind of break it down. This week's novelty spike is mindsetty. What if the biggest discovery about aliens isn't a spaceship, but a molecule inside your brain? Then our sovereign deep dive is disclosures and illusion. You should just stop waiting for a White House announcement. The greatest lie about reality is the one you've been told to believe. Then we've got our sovereign breakthrough, reclaiming your reality. The only thing stopping you from creating your perfect reality is the belief that you don't have the power to do it. And finally, our sovereign win, the authority audit. Time to fire the systems that don't serve you, audit your authority, or others will continue to define your life.
Sounds like a fantastic lineup. Let's get started with that novelty spike.
Imagine you've been screaming into a void for decades, and the neighbors called you crazy, then the homeowners association knocks on your door. They aren't there to apologize. They're there to tell you they've installed a communications terminal in your backyard, and for a $9,500 fee, they'll show you how to use it. That is this March 2026 wide report on the Eleusis and this week's novelty spike.
I'm still scratching my head over that hypothetical scenario from the outline. The whole homeowners association installing a communication terminal thing? It sounds absurd, but it feels disturbingly relevant.
That's the narrative hook, John. It's meant to sting. Imagine you've been screaming into the void for decades about this contact, about non-human intelligence, about the altered states, and the neighbors called you crazy. Then the institutional gatekeepers don't apologize. They install that communications terminal in your backyard and present you with an invoice. That, in essence, is the March 2026 wide report on the Eleusis project.
Eleusis, is that the SETI for the mind thing? I saw the headlines, but I just skimmed it. It seemed like just another tech startup chasing the spiritual market. Why should listeners care?
They should care because they're witnessing the institutionalization of the esoteric. The system is moving from are they real to how do we license the communication? The novelty spike, as I call it, isn't the existence of non-human intelligence. That's old news for anyone paying attention. The novelty is the establishment trying to attempt to build a toll booth to the gate of your own consciousness.
A toll booth? Okay, that's a dramatic way to put it. Explain the pivot you mentioned in the notes. What's connecting a UAP executive order to a psychedelic research?
It's a systemic pivot, John. It involves two key sources. First, you have recent UAP executive order, which effectively pulled the unidentified anomalous phenomenon from the fringes and formalized a structure for information control and analysis within the government. They've legitimized the object of the mystery.
Right, they've acknowledged that something is in our airspace that we can't explain.
Exactly. Now combine that with groundbreaking DMTX research coming out of places like the Imperial College of London. This research isn't just about therapy. It's about mapping, stabilizing, and extending access to the hyperdimensional spaces accessed via endogenous psychoactive compounds. They are literally, quite literally, formalizing the subjective encounter with what many describe as the others.
So, the government legitimized the physical phenomena, and the academic sciences legitimizing the consciousness phenomena, and you see both of them as part of the same attempt to control it?
I see both as evidence that the system, the government, big tech, and even certain academic institutions is preparing to monetize, categorize, and control the gateway to non-ordinary reality. The aliens aren't the novelty. The unprecedented effort to formalize and gatekeep the experiences. It's a move to commodify the ultimate human frontier, consciousness itself.
Whoa, so it's certainly a paradigm shift. So, what's the ultimate takeaway for our audience right now?
The takeaway is vigilance. This is why I appreciate the work of independent researchers and authors who focus on the nexus of consciousness, technology, and reality structure. Specifically, I have to give a huge nod to Andrew Gallimore, the author of Alien Information Theory and other seminal papers on DMT research. His work on the pharmacological and theoretical basis of contact is essential for understanding what Eleusis and similar projects are trying to achieve. I deeply respect his approach and his rigorous intellectual framework. And I sincerely hope we can get him on the show as a guest in the near future to dive deeper into his DMT model of the universe. Because, John, if we don't understand the frameworks, we'll be paying that $9,500 fee without even knowing what we bought.
I'm not going to lie, Dave, I don't want to pay that $9,500 fee.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This should be open source to everybody. Well, that's awesome. Very fascinating work on DMT and mapping interdimensional spaces and kind of looking at, that looks at the whole other aspect of, the phenomenon not necessarily being nuts and bolts, but perhaps higher dimensional or interdimensional. So that's this week's Novelty Spike. Let's go ahead and look at our Sovereign Deep Dive, and I'm going to hand it over to John for this.
We're moving on to what Dave calls the systemic deep dive. Dave, you talk about the four quadrants, bifurcation, and the manufacturing of consent. That sounds like a 1970s prog rock album title. What exactly is this deep dive? And why are we splitting our perception of reality into a materialist and esoteric lens? Lay it on me, Professor.
John, that's a great question. And you're right, it does sound kind of dramatic, but it's really just a simple framework to help us see the whole field of play. Think of it like this: when the system, the institutions, the Lucius projects, when they try to manage your awakening, they're coming at it from two sides. The four quadrants bifurcation is just our way of deconstructing that management, that manufacturing of consent by looking at both the hard science view and the spiritual conscious first view.
Okay, so two lenses. Materialist, it's just brain chemistry lens, and the esoteric, it's a multi-dimensional encounter lens. Got it? Let's look at the first quadrant you called the upper left, the titrated soul. And your little story here, it's kind of creepy.
Well, it's supposed to be. The scene is this. You are in the hospital bed, maybe in a gorgeous Caribbean clinic, or maybe in a high-tech lab. You've been given a psychedelic, say DMT, but a doctor's sitting there watching a monitor, managing your encounter. On the materialist side, they call it the harm reduction, and preventing ontological shock. They're literally titrating the dose.
So they're giving you a tiny sip of the infinite to make sure you don't go full Alice in Wonderland and freak out the neighbors, like training wheels for the transcendence.
Precisely. They're making the infinite digestible. The materialist view, and this is based on the work of researchers like Carhart Harris and his team in 2019, focuses on dose titration to prevent the ontological shock. They're treating it like a medical procedure.
But your esoteric view flips that script. You call it a cage?
Well, yeah, because it is. The esoteric view seems that the human mind is a non-local receiver. That's what they believe. These aren't just chemicals sloshing around. These are encounters with what Dr. Rick Strassman and his seminal 2000 book called The Spirit Molecule. If your awakening is supervised, managed, and dosed by an institution, is it truly yours? The system wants to ensure your subjective experience never exceeds the boundaries of what they can explain away as a therapeutic hallucination.
That's a powerful idea. So here's the story summary for our audience on his first quadrant. Imagine you finally win the lottery and you get a ticket to Nirvana, but before you can walk through the golden gates, a friendly guy in white coat hands you an eyedropper and says, "Just a little bit now. We'll tell you what it all means later. Don't worry, we've read the instruction manual for your soul."
That's just so perfect, but slightly terrifying summary. Thanks, John.
So, why should our audience care about this titrated soul quadrant?
Well, because this is where the manufacturing of consent for the psychedelic revolution begins. They are pre-interpreting your awakening. Your moment of subjective freedom is being branded, packaged, and dosed to ensure it never becomes too radically free. If you don't reclaim the right to interpret your own mind, your dreams, your meditations, your synchronicities, you're just renting your revelation from the medical establishment. We have to audit our own subjective experiences without their clinical language. That's the active step here, is the subjective audit. Practice documenting your own high-strung experiences, dreams, meditations, synchronicities, without using medical or clinical language. Reclaim your right to interpret your own mind. So let's go on to the next quadrant, the upper right, the meat suit versus the antenna. And I'll hand it over to you, John.
Ah, I love that. Meat suit. Because honestly, I feel less like a temple of consciousness and more like a poorly maintained minivan with a perpetually blinking check engine light, usually right after I've eaten something questionable. But antenna? That sounds a lot cooler. Like I could finally pick up an interdimensional jazz or at least figure out where I left my keys, maybe?
Yeah, Sean. Well, precisely, the system, the medical establishment, the reductionist science looks at you, specifically your brain, on something like DMT or doing a prolonged or profound altered state, and they see what they call entropy. just random, chaotic neurons firing. To them, your experience is nothing more than a glitch in the biological machine, as Dr. Rick Strausman, a pioneer in this research, noted. To those who hold the classical neurological model, the extraordinary visions and experiences of the psychedelic state are simply the result of an organic psychosis. That is the materialist view, the EEG headdress. If they can't measure it on a brain scan, it's not real.
Man, Dave, that's so boring. It's like saying a symphony is just vibrating air. And I had a buddy, let's call him Gary, who experienced this firsthand. Gary was always a bit of a skeptic, a real show me the data guy, the kind of person who debates the physics of Lord of the Rings. He had a profound, let's say, experience one weekend, totally non sanctioned, not the official IV drip you mentioned. He said he saw a light, got all these downloads, felt totally connected, and finally understood why his cat stares at the ceiling fan.
Yeah, John, well, it sounds like your friend Gary had the classic non-local interaction.
Exactly. He goes to his doctor a week later for a routine physical. He's telling his doctor about his profound, life changing shift in perspective. And the doctor, without even looking up from the charts, says, well, your blood pressure is a little high. You're probably just anxious. Let's adjust your dosage. Gary walked out feeling like his soul shaking epiphany has been reduced to a simple chemical imbalance that could be fixed with a pill. The doctor just saw the minivan with the check engine light. He totally misses the antenna trying to tune into the in-dimensional jazz.
That's the perfect illustration. The esoteric truth is that you are a biological antenna. Your nervous system, your brain chemistry, your body is not just a meat suit to be treated when it breaks. It's a sophisticated device to be tuned. And the system's biggest fear is you realizing that you have a tuning dial. That's where the hitchhiker effect comes in. The objective evidence we pull from guys like Kelleher and Knapp interacting with the phenomenon causes measurable psychological changes that follow you home. As Dr. Christopher Green and Colm Kelleher documented in their work, the effects of these encounters are objectively measurable and follow a pattern of persistent psychological change long after the initial event. It's a change in the antenna, not a glitch in the meat suit.
So let me break this down. This quadrant for the audience, because this is where the power is, the upper right quadrant, the meat suit versus the antenna. The problem: the system reduces your consciousness and profound experiences to merely biological noise. Entropy, the meat suit, they ignore the non measurable reality, which is like I ignored the nutritious label on a family sized bag of chips or that McDonald's Big Mac I just ate. The truth: you're a biological antenna. When you change your chemistry, your environment, or your focus, you change your frequency. Why you should care: when they reduce you to your biology, they strip away your agency. They tell you only they have the authority, the state sanctioned IV drip, to fix your broken body. You become a passive passenger in your own minivan. Now, how to overcome it? Recognize that you are a device to be tuned, not a body to be treated. The active step is the frequency check. Pay attention to how your physical environment, the food you eat, I gotta stop eating chips and Big Macs. The light you take in, the sound around you affects your reception. You have the dial.
You know what, John? That is beautifully put. It's about self-sovereignty over your own frequency. Stop waiting for the official diagnosis and start tuning your own antenna.
Absolutely. Don't be a minivan, be a radio telescope, one that can finally pick up that sweet, sweet interdimensional jazz.
Yep. Awesome, awesome on this quadrant. So let's go ahead and we will start with the next one. This quadrant is our third quadrant of our analysis for the disclosure, the lower left. This area deals with our cultural and shared experience of the phenomenon, and I call this section the new priesthood.
Ooh, the new priesthood. Are we talking about guys in robes doing secret handshakes, or are they wearing like ironic t shirts? Because I prefer ironic t shirts.
Well, John, more like lab coats, actually. The core narrative here is that we're seeing the rise of a scientific priesthood. Think about it. They've replaced the following robes of old religious authorities with clinical white coats. They want to swap out what I call galactic mythos, the big, awe-inspiring spiritual wonder, with a dry, boring medical case study. They are presenting themselves as the authorized translators of the unknown and the ones only who can tell you what the phenomenon really is.
Oh, okay, okay. I get that. So instead of going to a shaman in a smoke-filled tent to hear about star gods, we're going to some guy with a clipboard and a really long title who says, yes, this is definitely a neurosomatic anomaly. And it's like turning a superhero movie into a very depressing documentary about bureaucracy.
Exactly. From a materialist point of view, this is a conscious effort to shift the culture from hippies in the woods having a profound experience to a sterile clinical study. It sanitizes the entire culture surrounding the phenomenon and it makes it safe, manageable, and most importantly, controllable.
So they're taking the weird out of the weirdness. They're scrubbing all the fun and all the soul out of the mystery. It sounds like they're trying to turn a spiritual revolution into a shareholder meeting.
Well, yeah, John, that's the danger. Now, on the esoteric view, the spiritual or deeper level, this ties into the idea of the global mythos. I reference Terence McKenna's novelty theory here. He proposed the time wave, which suggests we are being pulled towards a great transition or a point of ultimate complexity and novelty.
McKenna, the mushroom guy, I love him. So instead of the universe being a cold, dead place that occasionally throws up an unidentified object, McKenna's idea is that the universe is actually alive and trying to pull us into a higher state of consciousness.
Precisely. The esoteric view sees this whole event as a mythic, consciousness altering moment. The scientific priesthood is trying to replace that potentially terrifying but ultimately liberating mythic timeline with their own dull materialist one. They want you to focus on security clearance and flight characteristics, not on the evolution of consciousness. So, with that being said, Quadrant 3, let's wrap this up for the new priesthood summary. Our lower left focuses on how the disclosure narrative attempts to control the cultural perception of the phenomenon. It's a shift from a spiritual galactic mythos to a sterilized medical case study championed by a new scientific priesthood. This materialist view seeks to replace the profound esoteric potential, like Terence McKenna's great transition, with a manageable clinical reality. And well, honestly, why should everybody care about this? Well, it is actually kind of a big deal. Culture is the collective agreement on what is real. If the system owns the culture of the phenomenon, they own the limits of your imagination. They want you to see the aliens as a security threat or a medical anomaly, not as a cosmic kin. If they can control the story, they can control the public's response. So, of course, now that we know about this, well, how do we escape it? Well, action to escape. The mythic reclamation. Engage in the unauthorized history of the phenomenon. Look at folklores, ancient texts, and early ufology. Contrast these raw myths with the sanitized disclosure narrative. Look up Terence McKenna's 1992 novel theory as an alternative to the materialistic culture timeline. You have to remember the stories that you want they want you to forget, right? So, there are tons of different stories you could look at. I mean, literally dating back thousands upon thousands of years. And that brings us to the lower right quadrant. Quadrant 4, we're calling it the regulatory capture. This addresses how the system is currently building the legal framework for reality. Think of organizations like the government's Aero Office or private corporations like Elucius. The core narrative here is that they're creating a two-tiered system. If you don't buy into their official disclosure narrative, maybe you don't have the $9,500 ticket to their exclusive conferences, you're dismissed as just, a conspiracy theorist.
Wait, 9,500 for a conference ticket? Bro, I can't even afford my rent right now. So if I can't afford to be in the know, I'm just some schmo yelling into the void on Twitter. It sounds like they're trying to put a velvet rope around the truth.
Exactly. From a materialist view, this is regulatory capture. They are creating a control chain of custody for truth through bureaucracy and corporate influence. They want to be sole authenticated source.
So it's basically just putting a copyright on the universe. Got it. Great, Dave. Got it.
But the esoteric view is even more profound. It's the concept of a control system. This idea goes way back to researchers like Valier, who argued the phenomenon itself acts as a kind of feedback loop or a control system for human consciousness, shaping our beliefs and developments. According to his 1969 study, the modern system is essentially attempting to hijack that natural control system.
A cosmic operating system that they want to install into their own buggy updates onto fun.
Precisely. So, to summarize the lower right quadrant, regulatory capture is the system's effort to own the culture and the legal definition of the phenomenon. They are attempting to frame it exclusively as a security threat or a medical anomaly.
Why you should care, because culture is how we collectively decide what's real. If they control the narrative around aliens, they own the limits of your imagination. They want you to see them as something to be terrified of, not as a potential cosmic kin. They want a fearful public that will rubber stamp their defensive budgets.
Yeah, and so what is the active step to escape this system? Well, we call this the mythic reclamation. You need to engage with the unauthorized history of the phenomenon, dive into folklore, ancient texts, and early ufology, the stuff before it was fully weaponized by government officials. Contrast these raw, untainted myths with the sanitized disclosure narrative.
So, do your own homework. Read the dusty books they don't want you to read. It's like unplugging from the corporate version of reality and finding the original source code.
Exactly. And for further research on alternative cultural timelines, I recommend checking out Terence McKenna's 1992 novelty theory, which offers a radically different perspective than the standard materialist view of history.
Dave, we just finished that four quadrant bifurcation deep dive on the manufacturing of consent. And honestly, I need a nap and maybe a stiff drink. Or for me, it's more of a coffee. Seriously, you just told our audience that their moments of cosmic bliss are being microdosed. Their bodies are being downgraded from an antenna to a minivan. Their spiritual destiny is being outsourced to guys in lab coats, and the whole show is behind a $9,500 velvet rope.
That's a very fair summary, John. We basically deconstructed how the system is trying to manage the entire awakening process, splitting reality into the materialist or the systems view and the esoteric, the truth. The key is seeing the pattern and how they do it.
All right, Dave, hit me with the final punchy summary. What's the audience supposed to remember? The playbook for escaping the system's attempt to control their enlightenment.
Well, it comes down to four simple acts of self-sovereignty. The deep dive, the four acts of sovereign consciousness. So what it is, your inner experience. The system's lie, the materialistic view is it's a therapeutic hallucination that needs to be controlled. Your power, the esoteric truth, is your mind is a non-local receiver. Your subjective experience is the ultimate authority. The next step is your physical body, the object. The material view is it's just entropy, chaotic neurons firing in a meat suit. But the esoteric truth is your body is a biological antenna. What you experience follows you home, such as the hitchhiker effect. What is it? The culture, our shared culture, right? The systems lie. We need to replace your galactic mythos with a medical case study. What the actual truth is, your power, is we're headed towards a great transition. The global mythos should be radically free. And finally, the rules of the game, the systemic, and the systems lie. The truth needs a legal framework accessible only to the wealthy, but your power or the esoteric truth is the phenomenon as a control system. The modern system is trying to hijack your collective consciousness. And why you should care? I'm going to hand this over to John.
So, why should anyone care about this academic sounding bifurcation? Because if you don't, you're signing up for the worst reality show ever, My Managed Awakening. They want to put an instruction manual on your soul, a check engine light on your epiphany, and charge you a subscription fee for the universe. This is the ultimate manufacturing of consent. They're just telling you what to think. They're telling you how to feel and how much to feel it. If they can control the story of the cosmic, they control the limits of your human potential. The escape plan, four concrete steps to reclaim your power.
Exactly. But The good news is escaping is simple, though not always easy. It's about auditing your life in these four areas. First area is reclaiming your revelation. Stop waiting for a doctor to tell you your dreams or synchronicities are real. Active step. Document your profound experiences using your own mythic language, not clinical terms. Your mind is yours to interpret. Tune your antenna. Stop seeing your body as just a meat suit to be treated when it breaks. Active step. Track your own physical environment. Diet, light, sound, meditation affects your reception of non-local information. You have the tuning dial. 3. Remember the raw stories. Stop letting the scientific priesthood replace wonder with bureaucracy. Active step. Dive into unauthorized history, folklore, ancient texts, early ufology. Contrasts the raw myth with the sanitized disclosure narrative. You own the story. And finally, unplug from the copyright. Stop allowing your cosmic questions to be defined as either a security threat or a medical anomaly. Active step here. Reject the idea that truth requires a $9,500 ticket to a government security clearance. Look to the radical alternative timelines. Your truth is free.
So, in short, don't let the man microdose your DMT. Downgrade your body, swap your spiritual destiny for white paper, or charge you rent for the universe. It's time to fire your authorized translator and start writing your own interdimensional prog rock album.
Precisely, John. It's all about self-sovereignty over your own frequency. And so that wraps up, the sovereign deep dive, and we're going to go right into our sovereign breakthrough, reclaiming the frontier. So we've been talking about the concept of sovereignty in the context of the phenomenon, and today we're diving into what I call the sovereign breakthrough, reclaiming the frontier.
That sounds like a Blockbuster movie title. Like, I'm going to drive straight over to Blockbuster right now and rent that out, Dave. Is that part of where we all get a cool spacesuit and a plasma rifle?
In a way, yes, but the frontier we're claiming is the frontier of your own perception. I want you to imagine a narrative, the guided tour of the new world. Imagine you are a pioneer standing on the edge of a vast, unmapped continent. For years, you were told this land didn't exist. Then, suddenly, the official cartographers arrive. They tell you the land is real, but it's too dangerous for you to walk on alone. They put up a perimeter fence, set up a ticket booth, and tell that if you want to see the new world, you have to take their guided tour and listen only to their approved history of the terrain.
All right, Dave. Okay, I'm picturing a very annoying, overpriced tour bus driving around this beautiful, untouched continent, and the tour guide is probably wearing cargo shorts. It's the UFO Disneyland. Woo.
Yeah, precisely. Now, here's why you should care about that fence and that ticket booth. The moment you let an institution, whether it's a government agency or frankly a $9,500 a week spiritual retreat, become the authorized translator for your reality, you surrender your most fundamental right, the right of primary experience. If you wait for a press release to tell you a UAP is or what a UAP is, you are living in a tiltrated reality. That's a term from chemistry, John. It means that they've taken a raw, powerful truth and watered it down, stripped it of its potency so it doesn't disrupt the status quo.
So they're basically giving us the decaf version of the universe. And by the way, I hate decaf. It tastes okay, but I really don't like it. And by the way, also, that decaf coffee that I really don't like, it's not going to wake me up.
I feel like decaf coffee completely defeats the purpose of coffee because coffee is, I mean, don't get me wrong, is gross. It's not, it's not
Gross!
for
Coffee is gross! Don't you dare disrespect my coffee. It wakes
coffee.
me up.
Well,
I'm gonna go get a coffee right now.
no, no, that's it. To be a sovereign is to internalize the truth. The official story is always a tool for stability, not a map for truth. And this isn't just my opinion. This is a core concept in critical theory and media studies. Any institution managing a narrative does so to maintain its own position.
So how do we get off the bus? Hop off that fence and explore the new world for ourselves because I am getting really tired of this Disney tour in the cosmos. Like give me the action plan, Dave.
All right, John. So I've got four key steps to achieve sovereignty and reclaiming the frontier, as we're calling this. So you want to develop an ontological bullshit detector. When you hear words like official or clinically proven regarding the phenomenon, your immediate reflex should be to ask, what are they excluding to make this sound safe? The next thing is going to be practical, direct engagement. Prioritize your own raw data. That means your own experience through meditation, through breath work, or through rigorous field observation, or any other mediated report. You need to become your own SETI for the mind. Next up is build a sovereign node. This is about a community. Share your raw, unsanitized experience with a trusted circle. Don't go publicly immediately. Create a private, robust mesh network of truth that doesn't rely on a central authority to validate it. And finally, enforce the meta-narrative firewall. When official disclosure finally happens, treat it as a signal, not as a fact. Use the four quadrants framework, which we've discussed in previous episodes, including this one, to categorize the information and, most importantly, stop being a victim of the narrative. So, John, to summarize the sovereign breakthrough is the realization that official narratives about the new world, the reality of the phenomenon, the UAP subject, are designed to manage you, not inform you.
Why should the listener care? Because if you let them translate your reality, you're living a watered down, decaf existence. You're giving up the right to experience the universe in its full, mind blowing, undiluted power.
And the action, the escape route, is to develop that bullshit detector, prioritize your own direct experience, be your own SETI, and build a local trusted network of fellow pioneers. Don't wait for the official tour guide to show up and give you the map. Go make your own.
We'll see you on the frontier.
So, John, this section is titled The Sovereign Win, the Authority Audit, and it's our homework for the audience, the real world application of what we've been discussing. It's rooted in the intentional change theory or ICT from Richard Boyaziz.
Homework? Ugh. Sounds like my high school algebra teacher came back for a sequel. What's the assignment? Detention for not believing the S?
Not exactly. The assignment is simple but powerful. You take a mainstream article about UAPs or maybe a psychedelic experience like DMT, something that deals with the unknown. You then highlight every single phrase that's an appeal to authority. Things like researchers say, scientists indicate, or officials suggest.
Got it. So basically, every other sentence in a New York Times article on flying saucers, that's a lot of highlighting.
Precisely. Then the action item is to rewrite those sentences by replacing external authority with you. For example, if the article says researchers perceive the entities as technological, you rewrite it as I perceive the entities as technological.
Whoa, that feels narcissistic, but also kind of exhilarating. So instead of a high ranking official has confirmed a classified reverse engineering program, I write, I have confirmed a classified reverse engineering program. Am I supposed to be lying?
No, you're shifting your locus of evaluation. The goal of the intentional change model outlines that is to move from the ought self to the system dictated belief that you should be believing because an authority told you, to the ideal self, which is based on your direct experience and internal perception. The lie is the appeal to the authority, not to your rewrite.
Okay, Dave, I get it. It's like when I watch a UFO documentary and they cite J. Allen Hynek, I'm just borrowing his belief system. But if I say I believe these are interdimensional based on my own gut feeling after consuming all the data, I'm owning my perception. It's a spiritual muscle flex.
That's exactly right. You are separating your identity from the narrative of control. You're moving past relying on external validation for your reality. Think of what Straussman in 2000 found with DMT. The profound, often technological nature of the experience is deeply personal, and trying to fit it into a neat box diminishes its power. You have to own the experience, just as McKenna in 92 suggested we own the territory of the invisible landscape. Summary of the sovereign win, the authority audit, homework is this. Our segment focuses on empowering the individual and the audience by challenging the persuasive reliance on external authorities in high stakes discussions like UAP and conscious expansion. Why everybody should care? Well, honestly, you're outsourcing your sovereignty. Every time you default to, say, give away your power to interpret and own your reality. This exercise is about reclaiming your mind from what we call regulatory capture of your consciousness. The path to the ideal self here, intentional change theory shows that genuine, lasting change happens when you align your actions with your ideal self, your true goals and values, not just the odd self, which is what others, the authorities, tell you to be. Actions to escape, for, homework, select a text. It could be anything from an article on UAPs, DMT, other high strangeness topics. Audit the authority. Highlight every appeal to authority, scientists' claims, government reports, etc., etc. Replace and rewrite. Substitute the authority with I, like I claim or I reported, and then feel the shift. Reflect on how it feels to own the statement rather than borrowing the belief. This simple act deprograms the mind from systemic dependence.
Dave, we just finished that deep dive, the 4 quadrants bifurcation on the manufacturing of consent. And my brain feels like a minivan with 4 flat tires on a highway going nowhere. You basically told our audience that their moments of cosmic bliss are being microdosed, their bodies are being downgraded from an interdimensional antenna to a glorified meat suit. Spiritual destiny is being outsourced to guys in lab coats, and the whole show is behind a ridiculous $9,500 velvet rope.
That's a very dramatized but surprisingly accurate summary, John. We deconstructed the system's playbook for managing the entire awakening process, splitting reality into the materialistic or the system view and the esoteric, your sovereign truth. The key is seeing the pattern and how they try to control all 4 quadrants of your existence.
So, what's that final punchy takeaway? Give the audience the playbook for escaping the system's attempt to copyright their own enlightenment.
The stakes are simple, but profound. This is the ultimate manufacturing of consent. They aren't just telling you what to think, they're telling you how to feel and how much to feel it. If they can control the story of the cosmic, they control the limits of your human potential. As we've stated before, just kind of summarizing all this stuff, we have mentioned these items before in the podcast, but escaping is simple, though not always easy. It's about auditing your life in these 4 areas we call the 4 acts of sovereign consciousness. Reclaim your revelation. Audit the subjective, the lie. Your profound experiences are just therapeutic hallucinations. The truth, your mind is a non-local receiver. Straussman 2000. Your subjective experience is the ultimate authority. The active step, the subjective audit. Stop waiting for a doctor to tell you your dreams or synchronicities are real. Document your profound experience using your own mythic language, not clinical terms. Your mind is yours to interpret. 2, tune your antenna. Audit the objective. The lie, your body is a meat suit to be treated, and your experiences are just entropy. McKenna 92. The truth is, your body is a biological antenna. What you experience follows you home, also known as the hitchhiker effect. The active step here, the frequency check. Stop seeing the body as a broken machine. Track how your physical environment, diet, light, sound, breath work affects your reception of non-local information. You have the tuning dial. 3, remember the raw stories. Audit the cultural. The lie, we must replace your awe-inspiring galactic mythos with a boring medical case study. Well, the truth, we're headed towards a great transition. According to McKenna, this global mythos should be radically free. The active step, mythic reclamation. Dive into the unauthorized history, folklore, ancient texts, early ufology. Contrast the raw myth with the sanitized disclosure narrative. You own the story. Finally, unplug from the copyright. Audit the systemic. The lie. Truth needs a legal framework to be accessible only to the wealthy and the cleared. The truth, the phenomenon is a control system, according to Valet from a 1969 study. The modern system is trying to hijack our collective consciousness. The active step is the authority audit from the ICT homework. Take an official article and rewrite every phrase that appeals to an external authority and say by replacing it with I. This shifts from the odd self to the ideal self. Your truth is free.
Dave, that's right. At the end of the day, what we all have to do is we have to disconnect from the system and understand what they're actually trying to do to us, what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the thing, right? And I think this is kind of the final thought of the entire episode is when we get down to brass tacks, disclosure isn't going to come from the governments of the world. Disclosure is going to come from you. It's when you finally realize as an individual that you are not alone. And that's not necessarily in a way that everybody believes is the same. Right? The phenomenon appears in many different ways. Disclosure can happen in many different ways, in many different shades and spectrums and everything else. It's important that people realize that the more people that wake up to this fact and say, hey, I want to wake up. I want to reach out to the phenomenon. I want to have that experience and, see what's out there. Exit the cave. The more likely we are to, see a mass disclosure movement arrive from this sort of thing. So that wraps it up, John. I think this was an excellent episode. I love the UAP topic. It is near and dear to my heart. And I'm sure more and interesting things will come up. So why don't you take us out and have a sovereign day, everybody. Be safe. Architects, continue to work.
Stay sovereign, my friends.